ago. So until then, we did not have cement augmentation, but now I would definitely think about using cement for this kind of patient. But at this moment, I got my reduction right and my placement right. My headline is right, fixed. So the patient went on to heal without any complications. And the true lateral view is very crucial, and you can go back to the literature that was published in 2018 by Rickley from Switzerland. He's the AO surgeon also, and he pointed out the 6 points of the true lateral view. So the quality of the image, the place where you want to see it should be centerized, and the true lateral view means a straight line from the tip of the femur head all the way down to the shaft, and continuity of the anterior cortical line, the anterior line and the posterior line, and then that means the fracture reduction. And also the placement of the implant should be in line with this center line. So here's a case with a 90-year-old female fall from the bed. She was 4 days out. Typically when the patients brought to my hospitals, we would always start is giving the fascia iliac compartment block, which is a kind of a nerve block that minimizes the pain. And before taking an X-ray, we always do this procedure and get the fraction view, so we could get kind of an image during the operation. But this patient was 4 days out, which is, I think, is typical in India, but we cannot get the reduction just by pulling. So we placed the patient in a traction bed, and I knew I would have some kind of difficulty reducing this fracture. But using the clamp and the bone hook, I was able to reduce it acceptably, and shooting down my guide wire, and using the hollow reamer for the anterior portal, and shoot down the TFNA now. But this was a very unstable fracture with the very osteopenic bone, so I used a cement augmentation for this case. So the Colford, back in 1980, almost 50 years ago, described about the 5 independent variables for successful IT fracture fixation. And the bone quality and fracture geometry is, unfortunately, you cannot control those 2 factors. But the other 3 factors, what implants are you going to use, the reduction quality, and the implant placement, are manageable by the surgeon. So you have to focus what you do onto these 3 points. Actually, if you're going to use TFNA, it's more about talking about the reduction and your implant placement. So here's a case with a 50-year-old male fall from the height. He was a polytraumatized patient, so he went on to CAT scan, and we found out that he had the subtroch fracture with the intertroch fracture at the same position. So most of the subtroch fractures we do on lateral decubitus and opening up the fracture site to get the perfect reduction. And we using the clamps and K-wires and collinear clamps, we are able to get his subtroch fracture reduced. And then put it on the anterolateral reduction plate is 3-5 recon plate. Is a unicortical screws. And after that, it was just a simple intertroch fracture. So I used the collinear clamp for the reduction with the IT fractures and did my reduction and start nailing it. So center, using the hollow reamer, that will reduce the fracture, shoot down the nails, and the center, trying to be a center position, although it was not a perfect position. So here's my collinear clamp and the drill guide jig that goes together. So there's not much places that I can control with my guide wires, but you still can play with it, and you can get the reduction by keeping the collinear clamp inside too. So I was a young man, so I decided to use blades, the lag skirt instead of blades. And here's the final outcome. He was immediately weight bearing as tolerated on the next day of operation. So take-home message from my talks are the quality of image. So try to place your image in the center position where you want it to see. And also the reduction. So use whatever necessary, slightly open it up, collinear clamps or any kind of Weber clamps, whatever, K-wires, plates, anything to get the reduction. And also the placement of the implants are crucial also. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Professor Miyamoto. I guess now things are sorted for so we'll now move to the Dr. Sadak Indrashar.
Okay. Great. We've done more than 6,000 cases in Japan right now, and we haven't had a real serious problem that we're going to have to report it to the DPS. So I'm just going to show you how I do it and how advantage it is. So this was the publication came out from India back in 2020. To cut through or to cut out from the TFNA fixation. And this was a 83-year-old female with the pretty much unstable IP fractures. And the surgeon did this operation. The reduction seemed to be fine. Only the problem could be the tip apex distance, but it's 29, so for the TFNA, I don't think it's a bad number. A little bit off, but if this happens to you in your practice, how can you solve this? I mean, you could simply take out the blades and put the longer ones, it's cost the extra money, or you could play with your jig and try to advance your blades a little bit further down. But you know, once in a while, this kind of misleading of the lag screw or the blade occurs, and it happened to me in my case. So this was a 90-year-old female, same level fall, very osteopenic bone, but you know, she was healthy, lives independently. So I went on to do the reduction, and then got the pretty much good reduction, and I placed my guide wires at the center position, and after placing my blades, I found that it was way too off in the ideal portion. So I was kind of, you know, puzzled, how should I solve this? If number one was to take out the blades and put the 5mm longer, or to do this. So, you know, I decided to cement augmented this case. This is post-op day 2. She's trying to walk down. It's on her right foot. Now she's trying to put weight bear as much as possible. This is post-op day 5. She's now getting more comfortable without complaining of much pain. She's just taking our painkillers. So this is 2 weeks post-op. And this is at the rehab center in 4 weeks. So she was able to walk with a walker and went back home. So, you know, surprisingly, there was not many shortening or any kind of fixation problem related in spite of the short blade fixation. So cement augmentation really helps you in this kind of situation. Here's another case with a 87-year-old male, same level bone. He had a chronic renal failure and he was on dialysis for 17 years. And he still lives independently with his family. Getting the reduction, placing the guide wire, and extra K wire for the additional stability, because this guy was very osteopenic and the bone was very soft. So despite the fact that my blade was in a pretty nice position, I decided to do the cement augmentation because due to his bone quality. So we always check during the 0.5 insertion of the cement and then making sure that it's not going into the joint. So the 3 cc is the maximum dose that I use, and the placement of the cement is that thing that you cannot control by yourself. It goes where you want to go, to the weakest place of the bone in the head element. So it doesn't go like the voucher says, but you don't necessarily have to be worried about it. Here, the last case. It's a 75-year-old female, same level bone. She also had chronic renal failure and was under a dialysis for 5 years. So it was a pretty unstable fracture with the, you can see the lesser trunk is off and the greater trunk is also fractured. So we used every method that we could, clamps, the pushers, and the elevators, and to get the reduction. And again, got the pretty nice reduction and replaced the nail. And this was, and also this patient had bad bone quality, so cement augmentation was added. It was the reducing the positive reduction and the augmented by cement. But 1 week after, she complains of her hip pain after walking, after she came back to the rehab center. And then when we did the x-ray, although it was reduced positive reduction, the positive reduction was lost with the negative reduction and had the about 10 millimeter of the telescope. But the head element was still doing okay. So we went on to take a CAT scan on this patient. Fractures, it involved the whole posterior wall and the posterior buttress was gone. So typically, if I haven't done the cement augmentation for this case, maybe the cut through or the cut out could be easily happen. But luckily, this patient went on to heal. Although she had a massive telescope about 14 millimeter, she was able to walk. Oh, my bad. I just wanted to show you the data that this patient was moving, but I don't think this data is moving, so I cannot show you. Sorry. So the indication for the cement augmentation has two factors. One is a patient factor with a severe osteopenia or unstable fracture patterns. These two are the things that you cannot control. So there's no doubt if these two are happening, you should think about using cement. And also the surgeon factors. You really have to be, honest to yourself. Like you're gonna have to try to treat your family when you're with the greater trunk fixation. So the take-home message, the indication for the cement augmentation, there are patient factor and surgeon factors. Severe osteopenia, unstable fracture patterns are the variables that you cannot control, but the non-optimal reduction or the non-optimal head element placement are the factors that for the surgeon that you might consider using cement. But just don't rely on cement. Always get the reduction and try to get the perfect implant placement. And then, after all your effort, think about using cement. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Miyazaki.
So, I always get the question, is it a screws or the blades that you recommend? So, here's this is the study done in Switzerland. It's an AO group did this, comparing the impact of the bone cement augmentation on the fixation strengths of the blades and screws in the saw bone. So they have the 8 groups. The implant was screws and blades. The position was center in 4 cases and off center in 4 cases. And they were divided into the cement augmented group and non-cement augmented. So the blades and the screws was fixed, so the center position is right here on the sole bone, and the off-center position. And also the cement was added in 4 groups. And they have the mechanical test sticking their proximal femur head like this into the machine. And this was a catastrophic failure, which they measured it off. So failure loads for the screw and the blades. So if you could see whether you use the screws or the blades, if you augmented it, they were statistically significantly stronger than the non-augmented. The conclusion number 1 is cement augmentation clearly enhances the fixation stability of the TNFA blades and screws. And the failure load in off-center situation is that the blade was significantly stronger than the screws if they were placed in the off-center and non-augmented. So the conclusion from this study is that the head element position is more forgiving in blades than the screws. So once you set your guide wires and you know that it's off-center, you might as well think about using blades rather than screws. But if your guide wires are in a center position, it really doesn't matter whether you use the blades or screws. They always have pros and cons, so it's your option that you can always choose. But once again, if you're off center, consider using blades rather than screws. So that's the Solomon lab, and it's not a true, human study. So they did a similar thing, the Yale group did a similar thing in the cadaver bone. So you can kind of guess that the center with the cement augmentation is the strongest construct. So they annoyed that and then just made it the center position or off center without a cement and off center with the cement. And so this was the center position, and that was the off center position. And the off center lag screws or the blade were cement augmented. So they had 6 variables, and they had this kind of mechanical test until they had the catastrophic failure. And here are the results. So the center, the blades seem to be stronger rather than screws in every series. Blades off center was stronger than the screw off center, and blade off center augmented was not significantly stronger than the screw off center augmented. So the conclusion from this study is head element position is more forgiving in blades than screws. So once again, when your guide wire is off center, consider using the blades. But if you cement augmented of both off center head elements, it increases your resistance. So even you're off center and you might use the screw rather than blades, just think about using cement, and that would really help you from the trouble. And finally, there was a biomechanical analysis. They compared with the TFNA augment with the Smith and Nephew's Taylor's interconnect. So they made the unstable fracture pattern with the cadaver bone, and the quality of the bone was measured before they did the study for the 12 cadaver. And on the right hand, they did the TFNA or the TFNA augmentation, and on the left, they did the interconnect fixation. And they were put in this kind of machine until they had a catastrophic failure. And in the orthopedic bone, like DEXA, the TFNA was about stable as an interconnect. But for the osteoporotic bone, TFNA augmented did way better than the interconnect. and they were statistically significant differences between the two fixations. So in conclusion, in a low bone quality, TFNA is comparable to AirCAN. And cement augmentation provides significantly greater fixation compared to AirCAN in the osteoporotic bone. So when the patient is osteoporotic, and if you use a cement TFNA, think about using the cement augmentation, and you can add the stability more than the AirCAN provides the fixation. Thank you.
And doing this sort of fixation and intertrochanteric fractures for the last 20 years with the newer implants. Recently I had a case of 98 and 99 years for whom I operated, and she is now 94. But I have a few questions to Miyamoto, Professor Miyamoto. He said that augmentation with cement helps in an acceptable reduction fractures. So that would be the question to him. The second would be, reduction helps. We have been using autoclaved canvas straps. One of the assistant pulls in the desired direction to get the reduction. And we also use the Stillman rings also externally so that we can get a better reduction. Now, looking to the evolution of the implants, previously we used to do nails with 2 screws of smaller diameters into the head. And I had always a preference to go off center a bit towards the calcar side, so we get a definitive good fixation of the whatever blade or screw we use, because it goes through the upper part of calcar, it gives a good fixation. That's what I think, as I've done almost 2,000 cases in a teaching hospital as well as in a private center. Of course, the augmentation of cement is a very good technique again, but my attention is in a too much osteoporotic bone. When you augment, the stability is with the implant and surrounding few millimeters of the implant on the transverse diameters of the femoral head. What happens to the other osteoporotic areas except that? These are the few queries I would like to have an answer from Professor Miyamoto. Thanks.
Okay, so I'll start answering from your second question, the position of the laser device.
Yes.
Yeah. So my practice is always try to go center. When I started my training, there is a lot of discussion about the inferior portion is quite better than the other position, but I found that the lever arm for the proximal element to turn will be much stronger if you have the off-center position rather than the center. So I think those are the reasons why, and I think it's more universal that the element should be fixed in a center position, and all the other the biomechanical studies supports that if you have the off-center, it's much more weaker than the ones that we within the center position. So what I do in my practice is always try to go center.
No, I'm accepting that, but I say few millimeters down, some of the part of the blade we go through calcar to give a better hole. That's what my assumption is. Alright, center is good, but just 2 millimeters or somewhat that, so that it presses the upper part of calcar, the strong trabecular bones. That will give better mechanical hole. That's what I believe. But the literature says, of course, in the center, right? You are.
Yeah, and also with the classic PFMA, for the Asian, I think those 2 screws, the size was kind of huge, especially for the East Asian population. So tendency that we had to do to ensure to shoot the proximal screw was to a little bit lower the lax placement. So I think those were the reason why people still do the same.
Yeah, that's always an issue. Putting 2 screws, or sometimes it's difficult to put the position the second screw.
Yes, I agree with you on that one.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
And I quite did not understand your first question. Can you repeat it for me?
No, you said that cement augmentation will help in some of the cases which are not properly reduced.
Mm-hmm.
That's what your statement, I think, when you started the talk.
Yeah, I would like to, it's it's not after all your effort. I mean, sometimes, you know, the fracture is too unstable. Maybe in that case, you might consider using the bipolar head arthroplasty rather than the fixation by the TFNA. But there are still some cases that you try your best and you shoot it down with your laxers and it's off center.
Yes.
It's not a catastrophic failure at that moment, and you could just kind of rely on cement for adding some more stability. So it's like more like an insurance rather than, you know, not the first option. And if you use the cement, it will solve everything. That's not the thing that I want to tell. But after all your efforts, you're still concerned about your fixation, and then you might think about using cement rather than not using it.
Yeah, that's right. The unstable fracture, of course, it will be helped to some extent by cementing, but we always try to reduce it to an acceptable reduction, maybe 20% displacement in AP, but no displacement in lateral view. And the second thing, at least I always suppose it's a difficult reduction, then I will go for a biological reduction rather than anatomical reduction. Put a smaller size diameter nail and accept the biological reduction wherein the proximal fracture distal end goes into the bigger shaft of the lower fragment, sort of a Diamond Hudson sort of reduction, and then put a smaller diameter implant. I think we were happy with that. What is your opinion?
The problem I think we have is if you put the smaller diameter implants, the typical Japanese lady, like over 80s and 90s, they're very orthopedic, and they, you know, the relative stability comes to unstable fixation, and which means it will be the failure of the fixation. So what I do is I try to reduce it, and if I cannot, I would not hesitate to open it up and use my clamps or whatever tools that are necessary and try to get the reduction. And I always try to place at least a 10 millimeter diameter of the nails.
Yeah, that's perfect. Not less than 10. Sometimes because Indian patients are also like Japanese, sometimes 50% of the population, and sometimes we use 9 millimeter also. But my rather than anatomical, is sort of a biology thing when the unstable part goes into the distal fragment, and sometimes we accept that. That's what I was trying to tell.
Okay, yeah, so that happened in my practice also, and most of the time it causes the cut through or the cutout if they have massive shortings. But as long as you have the cement, I have not seen in Japan that they have the cutout or the cut through after implementing the cement augmentation. But that massive shorting does occur, and if it sticks out from your lateral thigh, they complain of the pain in the abductor muscles. And then, you know, at that moment we have to revise it. But it'll be a lot easier because we do not have the penetration through the acetabulum, which we have to think about using a total hip arthroplasty rather than the bipolar head arthroplasty. Like I've shown you one cases that done it. So cement augmentation in trouble cases, I think they could really help your practice and also your patient.
Okay, thank you, Professor Miyama. Thanks, that's for me. We have one more question from our colleague, Dr.
Oh yeah, sure. It's intact. If your posterior buttress is it's not intact, which means you have the greater trunk fractures or the lesser trunk fractures, which is the unstable fracture patterns. In those patterns, I allow the collapse. So I turn it 180 back after the final tightening, and then allow the some kind of a controlled collapse. But for the subtrunk fractures, we want to have a real good fixation on the proximal element. So most of my subtrunk cases, I just make it a fixed angle device and just tighten it up and use the torque limitation driver to hear the clank and fix the proximal fragment. So that's how I do it.
Okay, thank you, fantastic. Very nice answers. Thank you very much, Prof.
Welcome, my pleasure.
Thank you, Dr. Sandeep. Thank you, Professor Kanpur. We'll now move to Udaipur. So in Udaipur, our moderator is another veteran. He has more than 30 years of experience. And Dr. C.K. Amita. He is the director for Amita Orthopedic Hospital. Requesting Amita sir to please provide your inputs for any questions or comments.
Hi,
Oh, hi, Rebecca.
good morning to everyone. My question is on the last case in which you are showing the cement in case of entry wall. You remove the implant in the lateral position. My query is that do you do primary surgery also in the lateral position or on the fracture level?
Yeah, so it depends on the patient, but like if the patient has a comminuted fracture, like a neck fracture with the shaft fractures, I think the lateral position, especially with the subdural fractures, I prefer to do a lateral position. And that is why I did it on the lateral was because I could just convert it to the bipolar head arthroplasty in the same style. So after the removal of the nail, I just opening up the hip joint, and then I can just do the bipolar head arthroplasty at the same time. So that was the main reason why I did it on the lateral decubitus. But either way, it works fine for me. It was just the intratropical fractures. But the tendency that I've been going is if it was more troublesome cases with the unstable fracture patterns, most of the time we have to kind of push up the posterior walls into the proximal fragment, which is we're gonna struggle fighting against the gravity, right? So if we place the patient on the lateral decubitus, we do not have to fight against the gravities, and the muscle tension just kind of hugs the both posterior fragment into the place where they want it to go. So I don't have to use my strength, just getting the reduction. So I think in near future, in my practice, I would go rather in the lateral decubitus than in the traction head. So that's my answer.
Another question or rather I want to know, when we are putting guide wire and if planning for cement augmentation, then should we penetrate the wire, limit our penetration to the fovea, or can we penetrate to the head?
Yeah, so we are not able to use dyes in Japan. So when the cement augmentation started in Europe and North America, they were dying all the time. And then the surgeon realized that you don't necessarily have to do it if you're pretty sure that you have not penetrated through the either fovea or to the joint. So my recommendation is not go too far deep down the bone. I mean, try to avoid penetrating through the joint. I think that's my final message. So I dare going close to the joint. So always keep more than 5 millimeters, sometimes 10 is my safe zone. So I hope that answers your question. I'm sorry, you're on mute and I couldn't hear you.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay. どういたしました。
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Professor. Moving to Vijayawada, which would be your last for the discussion. We have Dr. Sitaram Chandev. He is a consultant orthopedic surgeon from Chennai. If you have any good surgeon comments on the event. Okay, Vijayawada.
Not defined. When would you prefer to use one? Lateral side,
So you are not, can you just be a little loud?
most of the time sometimes it's broken. Most of the time it's broken. Entry point is not defined. Hello?
Yeah, I could hear you.
That entry point is not defined. So where will you take an entry point? The middle side and the left side. How can you get there?
Okay, yeah. I'll go back to my slides. So like in these cases that I'm showing you in my presentation, so this is very hard to define where my entry point is. And the main reason why you cannot define is that the reduction in the quality of the reduction you have. So you can see your graded stroke is still off and your neck is inverted in the different directions. So it's your anterior line hasn't been lined up with the anterior line of the distal fragment. So in this pattern, you need to get better reduction than this. So I do not hesitate to open up the lateral where I shoot my blades, and then try to grab the posterior wall fragment, and then try to bring it anteriorly. And then I do have some chance to see this tip of the graded stroke, even though in these kind of cases, if I have a reduction like this. So sometimes I do have to do the over reduction, but most of the time when you don't see the entry point of the graded stroke, I think your reduction of the posterior wall is not mandatory yet. So you need to do a better job getting the reduction. And then there are many times that the graded stroke is so common unit in many fracture. So in those cases, I rather think about using the bipolar head arthroplasty rather than fixing it with a TFNA. So those are the concerns that you need to have. So I always have my BHA sets ready. So if I cannot reduce it and get my perfect entry portal, those are the timing that when I consider about changing my plan into the bipolar head arthroplasty rather than the fixation of the TFNA. So once you have your reduction right, you kind of have at the tip of the graded stroke like this. So you need to keep, you can see this radiolucent aluminum elevator that I'm grabbing my posterior wall fragment and trying to raise it up and then create this tip of the graded stroke. And then you can get the good entry point. And then you can start getting your reduction like this. And what's funny about it is once you have your nails in, your graded stroke did not fall apart. Only the part that you're going to have missing is the lesser stroke, because it's attached to the iliopsoas, and the pull force of the iliopsoas is so strong that it's going to displace it any way you have your reduction or not. So the only thing matters is your placement of your graded stroke. So put back your graded stroke where you want it and see the tip of the graded stroke, and then start shooting down the biologics. I think it's recommended. Have I answered your question, man?
One more question. Loss of reduction was introduced in the neck. The loss of reduction, sometimes losing the reduction while introducing the neck.
Yes.
Where the issue is coming. So
Yeah.
patients are getting on the table.
Yes.
How give us some suggestions how to avoid it.
So in those cases, I think your entry point is sometimes wrong, and also the do you use the hollow ringer in order to make the first hole, or do you use the traditional ones? Which is your option?
Mostly my asking the traditional one. I don't use the hollow link.
Okay, so when you use a solid reamer, what happens is the reamer just kind of fracks the tip of the greater throat, and which causes the massive displacement of the proximal femur. So typically, especially with the osteopenic bone, I personally prefer to use a hollow reamer, and I think the EPS can provide it if you ask for it. I think they say they have the hollow reamers. Can you make sure that you have the hollow reamer?
They have it in the set. They have it.
They have it?
They have it. They are providing. They are providing in the set. The hollow reamer is also available. They are providing.
Yeah, so yeah, I think the hollow reamer is one of the answers to do that. And then after your insertion, sometimes we do have negative reduction. At that moment, I make a small incision on the anterior portion of the femur, and then I stick my K-wire, and then get the reduction into the positive reduction. And my size of the K-wire is like 2.0 or 1.8. So it's not like 3.0 or 4.0. It's not like the Stein's pin or the like the causality. Those are, I think, too huge. And then even though you say it's a positive reduction, I think it's a more close to malreduction rather than the positive reduction. So I love just anteromedial cortex touching each other. So that like 2 millimeters or 3 millimeters of the positive reduction is enough. So you can always undo it after you're inserting the nail. You have negative reduction. You could undo it and get the proximal fragment back into the positive reduction place. And then I keep my K-wires in that position. And then I try shooting my guide wires to the blades or the screws.
Thank you.
Okay?
Sorry, Smith, we cannot hear you. You're not audible to us. Still not audible.
Yeah, am I audible now? Can you hear me now? Yeah.
I can hear you.
Thank you, Professor Miyamoto, and thank you for that interesting discussion. Now we have got some interesting cases lined up. So we'll start with Dr. Ashish Singhal. Dr. Ashish Singhal is consultant orthopedic surgeon. He is from Paras Hospital, Udaipur. Requesting Dr. Ashish Singhal to start with the case. We'll move to Udaipur.
Good morning all. So first of all, I would like to thank Campus Synthesis to organize this at our city Udaipur. I would like to present few cases which I have done in almost 1 year. So I'll start with case number 1. So the case 1 is 51-year-old male. Of fall, type 318 1.1. He's a smoker. So the X-ray looks like this. So the fracture line goes from GT till LT, and on the lateral view, you can see the rotation as well as the fracture line is going down till the subtroch level. So on tibial reduction view, we achieve good reduction. slight positive reduction, both in AP view and the lateral view also. The reduction was nice. So the fracture line was going till down. So I want to focus on few points. So definitely reduction, any kind of implant reduction is the key. So the Baumgartner reduction quality criteria, which says alignment in AP view should be normal or slight valgus, not more than 10 degree of the neck shaft angle, and in lateral view you should not accept more than 20 degrees of angulation. I think you should accept more or less, and displacement should be less than 4 millimeter in both AP and lateral view. So there is a trick for which I use for surface marking. I mark my greater trochanter tip and both AP and lateral view, and then 2 centimeter above and 2 centimeter below is my incision, and the incision is also around 2 centimeters. Then obviously Dr. Mayametta has already told us about the entry point. It is just at the tip or little medial, it could be lateral also, and we see it in both AP and lateral view. And the guide wire has to be in center. In the lateral view, it was little off center in this case. And after the positioning of the guide wire, you put the screw. So I want to focus the beauty of the system. You can see I have not done the compression yet. There's a slide. I want to compress a little more. So in the next slide, after the compression, we got the good reduction, and and the bone quality was good. So I did not cement it, and it didn't need it also because the fracture was not unstable. So this is a post-op X-ray, and patient was walking from day 1. So case 2 is a 8-year male with transverse and lateral wall fracture with osteoporosis. Sorry for the quality of X-ray. This was a transverse fracture, lateral wall fracture. I was a little worried. I kept lateral augmentation plate also and cement also ready. And the lateral X-ray also showed greater trochanter and lesser trochanteric fracture piece. So on table reduction was really nice. So there was one fragment, this was the other fragment, this was the other fragment, and on the lateral view also. So I purposely decided to put the screw little inferior because if I had to put little superior, I was little worried I would fracture greater trochanter into 4 pieces, and I wanted better purchase. So I did get the good reduction. So I avoided the plate and cement augmentation too. And the patient is really doing fine. I also put the 6 months X-ray that I think that is not in the presentation right now. Another case is 78-year-old female. So the fracture is just in between the greater trochanter and the lesser trochanter is in the inferior segment. Again, good reduction. There was a greater trochanter fracture also, but I got little positive reduction. And on the lateral view also the reduction was nice. We end on doing this case also because Dr. Desai also said we are worried for the osteoporosis, so I had not used cement till now, but I also like to put the screw in osteoporotic fracture little on the inferior side, but now I'll try for cement and maybe then I'll put center. So because I wanted to specifically mention in this case, this was a basic cervical type with osteoporosis. I kept bipolar also ready in case I don't get good reduction. On table reduction was like this, and patient was high risk and they were not ready for replacement, but I told them that if needed we have to do it, and we end on did the nail like this, and it was really stable, and we got the good purchase. So, and this went on healing very well. Patient is walking full weight there. So my take-home message is reduction is the key. Before good reduction, don't even attempt to put the entry. Good entry, yeah, any kind of nail you use, entry has to be good. Proper helical grade position, it might be center is the most preferred one, or slightly inferior, and we have to take care of the osteoporosis. Thank you.
AO classification, it is 3-1A1.2. Her DEXA scan T-score is -3.2, indicating severe osteoporosis, and she has no other comorbidities. So, due to severe osteoporosis status, we planned for cement augmented TFNA in her case, and we usually position the patient in supine position on traction table. We get a close reduction. We make our entry point according to the standard protocol. We introduce the guide wire, 3.2 guide pin, and then introduce the nail, TFNA, augmented nail, TFNA nail. And after that, this is the cement augmentation part. After finishing the nailing, we go for cement augmentation. This is the cement mixture. It is a vacuum cement mixing container. So we mix the cement and fill it in with syringes. There are two 2 ml syringes and 4 1 ml volume syringes provided in the kit, and we fill all the cements, and then we try to insert the cement through the syringe through the filling kit, and this is the intraoperative CM picture of cement filling. Sorry. So the cement has nicely filled. The basic trick here is whatever blade length we are using, if it is 85 millimeter, then we have to set the cement insertion device in that length. So it will fill only the weak part of the helical blade, because only the deep part of the helical blade there is perforations through which the cement will leak, and through which the cement will go into the weakest part of the femoral blade. So this is the immediate post-op X-ray. There is no leakage of cement into the joint space or outside of the bone. We make the patient mobilize on day 1 or day 2 according to pain, according to the pain status. And most of our patients get mobilized without much discomfort. Full weight bearing on day 1 or day 2. This is the post-op X-ray after 6 months. The blade is holding very well, and there is no migration or no breakage of the, no cutout of the blade. This is my second case. He is also a 75-year male with a very trivial fall in his bathroom, and according to AO classification, this is an intertrochanteric femur fracture of the left side, 3-1-A2.1. He has also osteoporosis with T-score of -2.7 and type 2 diabetic. So intraoperatively we tried to achieve close reduction. As the reduction is little bit unstable, we tried to hold the reduction with 2.5 mm K wires put anterior in the anterior cortex, and then we tried to enter the nail. And after putting the nail, standard TFNA, then we go for cement augmentation. This is the cement, like in the last case, this is the cement augmentation kit, and they have a Traumacen B+ cement, and then we inject the cement and we get a good feel all around the helical blade, TFNA blade, and post-operatively this is the post-op X-ray. Although here we have used too much cement, I will say, because they are providing up to 7 to 8 ml of cement, but hardly 3.5 to 5 ml cement is required to get a good purchase. But here we have used a little bit extra cement, that's why there is so much filling, and it is not actually that much needed. So this is the post-op day 2 X-ray, very good X-ray with good cement hold, and the patient was mobilized from the day 2 assisted with walker, and she has absolutely no pain. And this is the post-op 3 months X-ray. The blade is holding good, the cement is in position, and fracture has healed very well, and the patient is absolutely pain-free. And this is one of my last cases recently done. She is a 82-year-old female and presented with a trivial fall in her womb. She also presented with a stable intertrochanteric femur fracture on the left side, 3-1-A-1-3 according to a classification. She is also osteoporotic according to DEXA scan. T-score is -3.1. She is hypothyroid and type 2 diabetic. These are her intraoperative CM pictures. We get a good reduction on table with traction table. We introduced the TFN and L and then fill it with cement augmentation. This is the AP and lateral view with good reduction and good cement fill all around the ward. And we mobilized the patient day 1. Till now we have done almost 15 cases of cement augmented TFN in our setup in the last 1 year. And I will be very happy to share that most of our patients we can mobilize confidently from day 1, assisted with worker. Most of these patients are frail and very elderly people, and most of them are osteoporotic. So cement augmented TFNA gives us a good confidence that we can mobilize our patients very early from day 1. And all the 15-16 cases we have done, we have got a good result without any failure till now. Thank you.
If you have fracture, that is a greater trochanter and the lesser trochanter, the fracture is there post. There is a posterolateral fragment as well. These fracture patterns are unstable fracture patterns and they are difficult to address. So we decided to do I think the reduction what we need to do is that we need to use, we have to get the neck fragment, that is the basic cervical fragment, into the valgus, that is the positive reduction. And then I think we have to lateralize both the banana split and the posterolateral fragment. I think this is what we have to do. TFNA in this one, reasonably good prediction. I've got a positive prediction of the basic cervical fragment. I've got reasonable good prediction of the posterior banana split fragment. In cases, rather than taking the dead lateral entry, I would prefer to make my entry slightly medially, so that the knee acts as a buttress in taking the medial migration of the posterior fragment. You can see that there is reasonably good positive reduction. The fracture union is progressing well and the patient is behaving reasonably well. 6 months, the patient is walking well and behaving reasonably well. But I have one concern in this patient which I would like to, ask professor and which I would ask other faculty to express their fracture. If you have a close look at the screw, then the screw has migrated proximally. And this is the second case that I have seen with proximal migration of the screw. And my only concern is it commonly seen or is there any reason for which this could have happened? That's one question that I would like to ask the professor and other faculty members.
Should I answer now, or should I wait until your presentation ends?
It's up to you. I think we can finish this. It would be nice.
Oh yeah. I'll just You can go ahead.
Okay, the second case that I'm presenting is the.
This is the end of this case. So yeah, I'm going to come in at this moment. Is that okay with you?
Yes.
So I think this is the cut through that is, I think it's what typically happens in the TFNA rather than not the other implants like the Airgans or the gamma nails or whatever the Zimmer ones. They mostly go to the cutout rather than the cut through. And I think this is a typical cut through problem that the TFNA has. And it's not very common, it's uncommon, but it occurs like less than 2% or 3% of all the cases. And most of the cases that we see in Japan is cut through rather than cut out. So I think the TFNA is very strong against the rotation, although if the proximal head element grab is weak, what happens is kind of, it collapses a little bit because you do have the distraction on your fracture line after the reduction. So until the proximal fragment hits the nail, it collapses. So it collapsed about less than 10 millimeter, but I think that was the cause. So, in my practice, I would definitely think about adding cement augmentation at this moment to prove that. But I think the collapse enhances the bone healing. So when you see the bone healing, I think you're better off remove the nails or the blades at this moment, because if it penetrates more, and if it causes a damage to the acetabulum, then you're asking for the total hip arthroplasty rather than the bipolar head. So I think it's up to the patient's complications they have right now. So this is a typical cut through, but it's not so common complication that the ATM has. Have I answered your question?
Yes, sir. Yes, I've been following for the past 3 months, and it's been the same for the past 3 months.
Okay.
Initially, but for the past 3 months, it's been the same. So I think the fact is critical at this point of time, and as I was not reached, the fact is completely fine.
Yeah, she still has the articular cartilage, and it's at the fovea, so I think this patient can deal with it as long as the fracture heals. If fracture hasn't healed, I think it's about the time that you go to the plan B rather than just keep on stick on to the plan A. All right, next.
Again, a 58-year-old badly committed
3-year-old lady, she had a fall and she had a fracture pattern like this. She was an home ambulant lady who would go out using a stick and used to walk around. And we got a relatively good reduction. And we did a long nail, put it in place, but there was a large posteromedial fragment, and in spite of the angle and all being right, AP and lateral views, we did not allow her to really wait there during that time. We were allowing her to standing, but walking we had not allowed. We had allowed her to use a wheelchair for a period of 1 month after this. And 1 month after the surgery, she started forming some callus on the medial side, and this was the time when we started to make her walk. We had also put her on something like teriparatide for her bone density and all. And at 4 weeks, we definitely were seeing a lot of callus formation, and we never thought something would go wrong. But around 8 weeks, we suddenly complained of pain in the hip, and we repeated the X-ray. This is 8 weeks post-op, and there was a change in position. I talked this to the the children. Children are also significantly senior, 60s and all. So post-op at 8 weeks, there was a change of position. We gave her a little more bed rest time, and at 12 weeks we saw the change of position hadn't progressed too much, but then there was definitely some further change of seeing. So it was not stable in spite of having seen callus had gone slowly, but 16 weeks also, complete cutout didn't happen. I have seen the patient for last 8 months more. Now she stays in the same society. She comes out, stands, walks, goes out from the bedroom, comes to the front room using a walker. Not really very ready to get a hemiarthroplasty, and that's why these fractures become very significant, to treat them a little more aggressively. And then the very next case which we got, at 88-year-old lady, we just put in the TFNA long one and put in the bone cement also. And exactly at 4 months, I just called them. They are in home program, and the answer that they gave, my grandmother is running now, she's just not walking anymore. So basically, good osteoporosis treatment with as much as possible stability that we can provide, especially in octogenarians and nonagenarians. We cannot have a second surgery, because the first case I had attempted my best to tell that it will be better to go in for a surgery now and replace the hip. But then she was reluctant because the cutout is not full, it is not causing much pain to her, though her functional mobility is not good. I think when we are doing conservation of hip, I think maximum possible stability, because at 88 suddenly osteoporotic treatment will not pick up and go. So I largely nowadays, whichever I get above 80, and if I feel the bone is very osteoporotic, I would like to put in the cement inside. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ravi. Thank you for the insightful case presentation. We will now move to the next session, and what we can do is maybe we can.
First, we have to see the traction view.
Yes.
How the fracture is.
Yes.
Done fracture table.
So after anesthesia, we put it in a fracture table. So how do you put the limbs, both limbs traction or the other limb in 90-90 flexion? Okay. Then
after traction, you will see what is the, how many parts are there, and how is the orientation.
Yes.
Like Professor Dr. showed us how he used to reduce it. If it is a simple fracture, then it may come to a reduction with the traction and somewhat internal rotation or external rotation can align. But if it is about fracture side, and you can hold the fracture fragments into one piece, and if there is a sag, you can lift it. So depending on the type of fracture and number of fracture fragments, either you can do it closed way or you can open it.
So what are your criteria, Dr. Gopal, can you tell us what are your criteria for achieving a reduction and seeing that we have reduced the fracture with traction? So what are the things that you see?
So alignment in both the views, in the AP and the lateral views,
Yes.
the anterior cortex and the posterior cortex alignment. And
Yeah, in AP view, what will you see?
so the calcarea, the sentence line.
Okay, the sentence lines has to match, and other thing in lateral view, what will you see?
The lateral view.
Also, you have to see the anterior and the posterior cortices are matching with the shaft. So these are two key points. So if we are unable to achieve a reduction by closed means, then sometimes we need to have special kind of instruments to have reduction. So we can do a open method like a mini open method. We can go anteriorly or may go posteriorly or both way. We try to reduce it by various means. So the key point of this surgery is reduction, and unless until you have a good reduction, no implants is going to do the work for you. So the surgeon has to be very sure of his reduction. Okay. So there are various ways of reduction, like we can use joysticks, we can use spikes, bone hooks. Sometimes there is sagging, we have to ask the assistant to lift up the sagging. And many times in a very unstable scenario, when we have a very unstable fracture, we have to provisionally fix the fractures with K-wires or some form of collinear clamps or forceps to maintain the reduction, and then we can start the process of doing the nailing. So reduction is key to success. So no matter what kind of nails or plates or anything you use, never expect the nail or plate to do the reduction for you. You do it yourself and then use the nail is just a fixation methodology. Okay.
So first is the reduction, then is the nailing, not the other way around. And don't try to reduce the fracture with the nail. Many times we are, sometimes we are compelled, we put a nail then try to reduce with it. Never do that. First reduce and reduce, then only nail it. And see whether the fracture you have converted to unstable to a stable one or not. So always you can say what are the criteria of unstable fractures?
The four fractures. If it is a reverse oblique fracture,
yes,
if the calcar is involved, then it is unstable fracture. If it is a subtrochanteric fracture, then it is a unstable fracture.
Lateral
one is
Lateral one, large posteromedial fragment, and reverse oblique pattern. These are
an extension to subtrochanteric. So always you have to see whether there is any unstable criteria are there or not. So always check that. So if there is unstable criteria there, you have to try to address those problems also. Never jump to nailing. Okay. Once you reduce everything, then automatically your entry point and everything will be smooth.
In positioning, one thing is that you have to adapt the limb little bit so that you will get a good entry, and your trunk should be tilted to the opposite side 15 to 20 degrees. So you have a access in this area, you have a proper access. You just adapt the limb 20 degree and keep the trunk in tilted position to the opposite side. Then you start the procedure.
You have to reduce as first, then abduct, then adduct, or
you have to first position the patient in traction table.
If we adduct the patient, it will go into varus.
No, not always.
I'll answer your question. Very, very pertinent question. So we have to have the neck shaft angle.
Yes.
We have to replicate of the other opposite side.
That's correct.
So this is kind of a design where without ADD, adducting also, you can have a good reduction. So the key point is to maintain the neck shaft angle, try to have anatomical reduction. If not possible, try to go a little positive variance rather than negative. This is the key.
But
Most of the times.
But if the fracture is displacing or falling into varus after adduction, then it is unstable. So in that case, you have to maintain the alignment, put to KVS, then adduct. It will not go into varus.
Most of the times we have to
And your
use the
perineal
fracture
post
in a
also.
normal.
Perineal post is not in proper position, it may cause that problem. Perineal post.
If we adduct the patient, it will do the form. It will
But without adducting, it is very difficult to put the entry point and put the nail.
We are not putting anything. We are not putting anything. We are just reducing the fracture with some K wires, anterior and posterior, then we can adduct the patient to the entry.
Okay.
Yes, you try to reduce and put a anterior K wire and posterior K wire, so that you do not interfere in the nail pathway. Most of the times we have in mind that put the patient in adduction first, then we'll the reduce and we'll give the entry. But that's not correct. You have to reduce it first.
In that regard, this nail system is little forgiving in the sense the angle that the jig attaches to the nail, it is forgiving in the sense without ADD ducting also, you still can put the nail in there. So that is one good thing about this nail system.
They
So
have the short jig, the jig is short, I think.
Not only short, the angle is very...
Angle is good and the jig is short. This thing
is
is
very
short. So it will not abstract.
Yes. That is the good designing perspective. So original reduction of everything, not only the neck and the shaft, but also the greater trochanter as well. Many times the greater trochanter as a whole is fractured and it is going posteriorly. So in that point, you have better to reduce the GT provisionally and you can clamp it with a pointed reduction forceps and then start the entry point so that the nail goes into the center of the GT and it holds the GT as well. So that is one way of...
One more thing, sir, as Dr. Professor Sivashankar said, if the fracture is far lateral, then sometimes fracture is here. Here is fracture, and you can go medial. You should go medial. Otherwise, you will not have that compression. If you go through the fracture, through the fracture line.
Point taken. In the sense, if you go through the fracture, you won't achieve adequate compression. So
you should. But many times, even if we try to do a proper entry point, we usually land up in the fracture.
So better to have a good provisional reduction of the GT and try to hold the GT with some form of K-wires or pointed reduction clamps. If you can't see it properly, open it and try to have a good provisional reduction so that you have a good entry point. As we know, with all kind of nailings anywhere, entry point is the key. So if you don't have a good entry point, we land up in trouble.
And spend some time in getting a correct entry point.
That is very important.
Don't be in a hurry. Never be in a hurry to get an entry point. Take some time. One more thing, if you do the medial entry, the nail will also have a buttressing effect. That will not be in the lateral entry point. So where you will do the entry point?
Please.
Yes,
would you like to volunteer?
Entry point where?
Please, Dr.
Brahma.
just middle to the tip of GT. This is my entry point, sir.
If the entry point is not center, a bit anterior and bit posterior, which will you prefer? Anterior entry point or posterior entry point?
Posterior.
Posterior. Why?
Going of the
What?
Because of anterior bowing of femur, sir.
it will hit the anterior cortex.
Bowing of femur. I will start slightly posterior and I will direct my nail anteriorly after passing the
If you go anterior, if you go posterior, the nail will also have a bend, and the end point will touch the anterior.
That's what I am
against
saying.
the-
After passing the mid shaft, I will lift the jig and I will
You are
redirect my
trying
nail.
to reduce it with the nail. That is not done.
I am not
Actually,
trying
the
to.
center of the medullary canal of femur lines up with the piriformis fossa posterior center.
Posterior.
But it is not in the dead center.
Dead
It is slightly posterior center.
Yes, sir.
Whenever we do bipolar hemi replacement or something, we take that entry only. It is not dead center. It is slightly posterior. That lines up with the medullary canal. So that's why if we have to err, we can err little bit posterior.
Posterior
But
side.
ideally is center.
And one more thing with the anterior, we feel difficulty while putting the screw or helical blade in the posterior part. That is the most crucial part to.
And I think the majority of the bone stock is
Thickness
good.
on the
Bone stock
anterior
is
part.
good on the posterior side, and practically, personally, I feel little more posterior is more beneficial in the sense I would like to reduce the GT, greater trochanter, and see where I can get a good entry point without getting into the fracture zone. So that would be possibly the better way to do it. But sometimes in doing that, many times we abort on the anterior cortex. So that's why provisional reduction is important. Otherwise, if you try to reduce with the nail, the greater trochanter, you end up touching the anterior cortex. That is not a good
I
thing.
am not trying to reduce with nail, sir. After reduction only, after passing the mid shaft, I am trying to centralize the nail anteroposterior
You have to do
in
that.
the distal portion.
You are.
Sir, after crossing the mid shaft, just by lifting a slightly lifting the jig, I am directing the tip of the nail, which is going anteriorly. I am redirecting it to posterior slightly.
So what you are doing, you are rotating this part. As a whole, this part will rotate anteriorly. Correct? And that the neck and head will be sagged into the posterior part. How will you reduce them that?
No, here I am just lifting. There is no point of a rotation. And
No,
by
actually,
lifting, and
you are-
the tip of the nail is narrow, and the proximal entry point is wider.
You are
I can
saying
just,
that
some
you have
play- some
entered
amount
like
of play
this.
I will get at the entry point. Sir.
Look, you are saying you are entering like that, and you will lift it up.
Yeah.
You will lift it up.
Not
He's
that
telling
much.
with the
That much.
rimming, not with the nail. He's trying when he's progressively rimming, because isthmus is the tightest part. So he wants to do it posteriorly, and while rimming he is putting the pressure and you're trying to.
That movement is
But that
not
is
this
not-
much.
that is-
That is not recommended. You have to spend enough time to start a correct entry point, check on the AP view and lateral view, take a proper entry point, then pass the guide wire in the center position. In the medullary canal, you have to pass. Check in both AP and lateral view and a true lateral view in which the neck and shaft lines up. That is the true lateral view. We have to take proper entry, then start rimming. Proximal rimmer or whole rimmer, then start. Don't try to, after rimming, don't try to manipulate.
No, sir, I am telling while putting the nail, after completion of the rimming, after completion of rimming, and after proximal rimming also you will do the same.
No, that is wrong thing. Nail will fall into the place of rimming. It will not change anything. So you have to
There
achieve.
will be extra going. The finger
is
This nail is designed in that way. This will accommodate the curvature of the femur.
এটা কিভাবে anterior
Do you have long nail?
Standard nail টা PFN 8 বাজিব, এটা বাজিব।
This nail has a very good curvature.
That is the advantage. That is another advantage of this nail.
Sir, ମୁଁ ତାହେଲେ start
ଦେଖେ
କରୁଛି।
start ଦେଖେ କହିଦେ। ଆଉ ଥରେ entry point କସମ।
Entry point recommended is tip of GT or slightly lateral according to their product manual, but it is is always better to take slightly medial, so that while rimming you will not go laterally more, because it is a tendency while rimming you will rim more of the lateral because this is the thin area, this is the thick area. So you have to take slightly medial, check in the AP view and lateral view.
This is a good use it for that.
This is the honeycomb. You can protect it and then start it.
One has to hold here.
से जे काढ़िया दरकार तादरे प्ले होची ऑफसेट अच्छे टू ऑफसेट प्ले होची
सर जल्दी टिके पोस्टले रिम हे गेला तो हमें प्रॉक्सिमल पार्ट टा बेसी टिके रिम कर देले बड़ा टिके रिम कर
that is not needed. If in the CRM you have now you pass the guide pin, under CRM you are checking in the AP and lateral view. If it is in the wrong position, they have this offset guide position.
Always go take
4 degree
as
60.
Always focus on the first entry point. Never think that I will drift towards normal.
If it is posterior, you want to centralize it, then you can change it to this area.
If we have a very comminuted GT and we are not able to get that entry point at the tip of GT or slightly medial to it, so at that time what should we do?
Well, at that time again, in the AP view, draw a line, lateral view, draw a line, the intersection, that is the entry point. GT you have to imagine your mind, and then after putting the nail you reconstruct the GT.
So after finally settling down on the guide pin in the correct position, then you start rimming. First is proximal rimmer. You have to 16 millimeter proximal rimmer. This one. You take this protection sleeve, protect all the abductor soft tissues. Then take the proximal rimmer. This is 16 mm diameter, or else you can use this solo mill. If you want to rim this part of the bone, it is better to rim through this one. So it will take out the hard bone here, and it will prevent the wedge effect. Like sometimes if your entry is more lateral or at the tip, and this hard bone is there, while putting the nail, you will tend to push this bone medially, causing it to displace varus displacement. So that you can prevent by rimming this part of the bone. Okay, so you take this protection sleeve. हाँ मैंने positive reduction, basic positive reduction is over positive reduction. So you take this 16 mm flexible rimmer. This is the stopper. That means you can rim only to this part. Anterior के posterior cortex गोटे को cortex में लागुଛି dust So proximal rimming is done first. So many of the local implants we start rimming with 8 mm rimmers, front cutting, then side cutting rimmers. But here, according to the product manual, after putting the guide pin through this proximal rimmer, it will stop here. You can't go beyond that. You remove this. Then you have to, if you are planning for a long nail, you have to put a beaded guide wire till the end, or else if you are planning for a short nail, this guide pin is also enough. And if it is osteoporotic bone or wide medullary canal, you don't need to rim the canal much. You can directly put a 9 or 10 mm nail, or else 11 mm also. But if it is a hard bone or young patient, then you have to rim the canal and then choose the nail. And what is the
Sir, always the long nail is better than the short nail.
That is a debatable thing. In osteoporotic and elderly patients, it is always better to put a long nail to protect the osteoporotic bone. In younger patients, you can put a short nail, that will also do the job. But many surgeons also do a short nail in elderly patients also.
It also depends upon the fracture morphology.
If the fracture is unstable, we should always go for a longer nail. If the fracture is unstable, then we should always go for a
soft trochanteric fracture, unstable fracture, always better to put longer nail. If the bowing is more in this design of nail, in none of the cases there is any aborting of the anterior cortex because they have a good curvature. So this design of nail, there will be no problem. Most probably they are claiming that there is no problem. But in most of the Indian implants, you will see distally the nail is aborting the anterior cortex. In those cases, you have to be very vigilant. Check the center position of the guide, and after putting the nail, also check the knee in the lateral view. Don't thrust the nail deeply, or else you will perforate
Whether
the
we should
anterior cortex.
undersize the nail or not? Whether we should undersize the nail or not?
Undersizing you can do for the fracture, it will not do anything.
For the
but
local implants.
For future cases, if there is fall, there may be some fracture disturbance.
We should not be undersizing. We should
And
not be
If the
undersizing.
local nail is averting the anterior cortex with the distal view.
I have my personal experience. I have bent the nail and I'm putting.
Oh.
I have
That is a
increased
good
the
option.
radius curve. Even with synthesis nasal, I have bent the nail to use it, and it worked well for me. I can show you example.
This is the
very
ruler.
short-headed person. I have, and a lot of bowing. It didn't even match with this nail.
Because the distal end will always be in stress. It will abort the.
Even the bending will be the very
But to
difficult.
bend the nail, but put it
Bending
on
is difficult.
So this is the ruler you have to check for the length and as well as the diameter. Okay, you can put this the diameter and see under CR in which diameter is fitting. But in TFN, 10 mm, 11 mm is okay. You don't need to go to longer nail, larger diameter nails. So this should match to the tip nail end. This is the marker for different 125, 130, 135 degree nail, but usually 130 degree nail is good enough. Okay, and then you check upper pole of patella. Okay, you can take
Here
the
only we have the 130, na?
Whether we should
130 only.
keep it on the tip or in the center of the neck.
Sometimes
sir केवे केवे जिटिटा बड़ था
ଏଇଟା center of the
ସେଇ
ତମେ ଏଇଟାକୁ ମାର୍କ କରିବ
ନେକ୍ ଟାକୁ ମାର୍କ କରିବା
ଏଇ ସ୍କ୍ରୁଟା ଯୋଉଟା ଯିବ ଏଇଟାକୁ ମାର୍କ କରିବ ସେଣ୍ଟର
This line has to be.
has to be in the center
If
ଦିଟା
your-
ଜିନିଷ ଦେଖିବ
If your reduction is perfect, your GT will match up to the center of the femoral head. If this is not lined up, then the fracture may be in varus or excessive valgus.
and according to their manual the nail should always flush the GT. That is not a case. केवे केवे GT टा उठी रहउछ काहेकि because सेटा रोहुछ सर उठी
But this is the even if it is a 360 or 380 nail in intertrochanteric or subtrochanteric fracture, this portion will not cause much problem. ଆମେ 360 ବି ଯଦି ଏଟାକୁ ଏପଟୁ ନବା ବିଷୟ ସେଇଟା ତ ଆମେ ultimately ଦେଲା ବେଳକୁ neck ରେ ଇଏ କରିବା ନା. So mid shaft ରେ ଆମକୁ issue ହେବ କି distal 1/3 ରେ ଆମକୁ exact nail we have to take exact nail length. So in that case there will be issue. But 360, 380, 400 will not cause much issue compared to this. Because after putting the nail, we will only keep the nail according to this position.
Yeah.
So after taking the proper length and diameter of nail, you have to.
How would you decide on the diameter of the nail? Thickness of the nail?
You put the ruler on this, check the inner diameter, 9 mm, 10 mm, whichever is matching at the isthmus level. Okay, narrowest part of the canal in the epiphyseal. Then you देखिए केमती नेल लोड करियो नेल रे मेनली गोटे तुम डिजाइन है जो नॉर्मल पीएफएन रो एटा गोटे बम्प कट डिजाइन अछि तार बुझिल और नेल रो एटा जो ता डिजाइन ता देखुछ ना एटा प्रोडक्ट मैनुअल रे टी देखिबो एटा स्लिमर अछि आ एटा बेसी इंपिंच करबोनी और लॉन्ग नेल रे तार कर्वेचर भल अछि और एटा जो तीनटा डिजिटल लॉकिंग अछि गोटे एटा 10-15 डिग्री ओब्लिक प्लेन रे अछि दैट इज टू होल्ड द स्ट्रांग बोन ऑन द medial femoral condyle. Medial femoral condyle stronger bone को से येटा परचेज नबो और डायनामिक होल गोटे रोचे और टॉप रे गोटे रोचे डेड सेंटर
एक्सियल तांकर फंडेड
हां एटा रे गोटे डिजिटल टा सर टिके ओब्लिक जाउची
Stress riser level is
गोटे प्लेन
and if you are putting dynamic always try to put in this part of the hole not in the superior part बाकी एतरे एटा स्नतार येरा स्नॉक पिट ता डिजाइन की
ଏଇଟା ଯୋଉ ହେଲିକାଲ ବ୍ଲେଡ୍ ଯୋଉଟା ଯିବ ସେଣ୍ଟରରେ ଯିବ ଟିକେ ଲୋରେ କ୍ୟାଲକୁଲେଟ ଏରିଆରେ ଗଲେ ଭଲ।
Well, as the manual says, better to go for center. Go for center always. If you have to err, you try to err it on more inferior and more posterior because that is the densest part of the bone, and you get a good purchase there.
आम देख आम जो स्टैंडर्ड जी पीएफएन करे आम कटआउट चान्स रोचे आम टे कालका इफ यू आर गोइंग little bit lower and purchasing the good bone, it is okay. But in TFNA, they are saying that even if it is center because of the helical blade design, whenever you will hammer it, it will get compacted. And if you are doing cement augmentation also, center part is better to fill the canal.
Next angle ta setik rohuchi ba sei mein maybe mane
It will vary because not all next angle are 130 degree.
See, center is not possible. You know, this is you only get 150 degree. It's a fixed angle device. It's just like a angle blade, something like that. So you cannot have center in all the cases. And many times, despite having very central located entry point, sometimes your entry point is little posterior. And in that case, try to have more lie in the center or posterior. This is the suppose in a valgus knee of 140 degree, you are putting a 130 degree nail. How can it be center? It cannot. So if it is center in the neck, that means it's going inferior in the head, or the vice versa in a varus. So it can never be center.
Nail assembly re to ita tera.
If it's an unstable fracture with a posterior medial combination, then we have to go for a center. We don't have any other option.
Again, the point is to maintain good anatomical alignment and put it in a center so that you can do a cement augmentation, or if you planning for a cement augmentation, go center. If you are going for a densest bone, go little inferior and posterior. Because
cement, I have some issues with it.
No, it's okay. That is, I mean, now we are talking about that, but I am also not a big fan of cementing. But then, if you have to, then go center.
So nail they have very good design so that we can put the nail very easily. It a quick fit snug fit easily variable. Then you tighten the top knot, and there is inside the nail there is a set screw. Okay, so after this is the handle and this is the aiming arm. This is 130 degree. For 130 degree. For short nail you have a separate aiming arm targeting the starting and dynamic locking options. So you check with this buttress knot and sleeves. There is slotted design. This slot should match to this area. Okay. Then you go on tightening this one. Tightening counterclockwise so that it will remain flush with the bone. This area. Then you can also make a little bit indentation in this bone with the stroker so that it will not slip. Then you remove this, put the nail. So initially in a short nail it is not a big issue. You can directly put the nail. Okay, so in a short nail you can push the nail like this, but in a longer nail you have to keep the handle little anterior initially. After negotiating the curve you turn it laterally. Okay, so that will be easier. And don't hammer the nail from the very beginning. You have to almost 90% you have to push the nail. In a short nail it should be only by push, no hammering. In a long nail you almost 90% of the nail should go freely. Only terminal part you can hammer it. And after before that you have to check in the lateral view in the lateral knee that it is not aborting the anterior cortex, or else it will perforate. Okay, so here is a end point. This is the nail end point. This is the nail end point. You can check in the CR where is the tip of the nail is lying. Okay. This one is for anterior in the lateral view, dead lateral view. Whether you
the trajectory of the blade you can see through.
So if your jig is like this, or like this, or like this, your screw will go posteriorly or anteriorly. So before entering here, you can put this guide pin through this area, and then check under CM in the true lateral view. This line and this line should match, and this should go in the center. Then your position is perfect. You don't need to manipulate and direct put the guide wire. Or else what we usually do, we put the guide wire and then we draw it and little bit manipulate it and try to go in the center. And this is the jig for This is to check for the position of the helical blade in the neck. You shoot the CR under fluoroscopy. These are markers. You match the nail ये जो
दीप्ति के बारे में
सब अच्छी से सर हमें यूज करने these two lines should in the nail no, no, cut out अच्छी इट स्क्रू टा देई छी सर आउ nail अच्छी किलो ना nail जो screw cut design टा bump cut टा तार दीटा mark those two marks should align with these two lines then this nail will go in the center position so you have to adjust the nail length accordingly withdraw push a little bit then you go according this is the buttress knot you would have consult tar na you check in the product manual you don't know but the main thing is that this yellow marks you have to align okay this yellow mark it should be aligned there is a yellow mark there is a red mark yellow mark you have to align slotted design will go then you compress it you have to cut the TFL completely and dissect the soft tissues or else there will be upset anti-rotation if you have to give a if the fracture is unstable and you have to put anti-rotation K-wire you can put through this so that it will maintain the reduction while putting this they have a design through the deep what they have anti-posterior अच्छे दरिया में see step then you have to match this and after checking in Siam this area should touch the cortex this little big it should touch the lateral cortex so this should go this area should touch the lateral cortex under Siam then the jig is perfect there will be no mismatch after that you take the guide pin before that you can check through this area also whether the handle is okay or not
sometimes you get posteromedial comminution that extends into the lateral wall. So when you have a comminution in the lateral wall, how important it is to reduce it before you do it or you can reduce it at the end?
If there is a comminution in this area, then we have to do something else, angle blade or something else. I think if this nail will go through the fractured area, how will it, because the nail design, this helical blade should remain either in the cortex flush or out so that we can give compression. If there is fracture in this area, there is high possibility that it will go inside.
You can supplement with another plate.
Supplement with a lateral buttress plate, protector support plate.
So in that case, what usually can be done is provisionally fix it with multiple K-wires in different direction and put encirclage wires to put it as a one unit. Then you do the drilling and putting the guide wire. Then once you put the guide pin there, after that you put the sliding screw, have whatever compression you achieve, then you supplement with some form of fixation to give the lateral.
Sir, when we are holding the fracture fragments, I mean, we are giving the guide wires, K-wires, anteriorly and the posteriorly to hold the fracture fragment. So when it should be removed? After nailing or before nailing?
If you have correctly placed both these K-wires in the perfect anterior and posterior, nail will not cause any problem. You can put the nail. After putting the nail, after putting the helical blade, you can remove it.
If it is abutting, if it is not allowing it, the nail to go,
then you have to
remove it. And you have to do some encirclage or some form of provisional reduction to clamps. Again, the whole bone sleeve has to be like a one unit before you put the nail. That is very important.
The lateral buttress plate, nailing helical screw della pore.
The floss achina. This design is this will remain floss like this. It is not like PFN A2 or PFN A where there are big screws. Several advantage achi. That will also buttress
screw the compressive floss. If you give a very long one, then it will stand out.
So this is 3.2 guide pin, 3.2. So you will drill it. Check under here. Then height I think. Ethi play role. Check under here and drill it. Don't over drill. Minimum 5 to 10 mm away from the apex of the femoral head. You have to stop. Because if you will drill it too close, there may be inadvertently you can penetrate the joint. In those cases, you can't do any cement augmentation. So you check under CM, tip apex distance. Although in TFN or PFN it is not important compared to DHS, but ideally it should be tip apex distance of 25 mm.
So
You check
less than 25.
Less than 25.
In both AP and lateral.
Okay, summation. And after putting this guide pin, you have to check under CM, and then even if it is a hard bone, you have outer cortex break kariya pai jota standard. There is a perforator for breaking the outer cortex. If it is a osteoporotic bone, you just break the outer cortex and then take the proper size of helical blade and hammer it. If it is a hard bone, you have to rim throughout. This is for perforating the outer cortex. So also it has also a stopper here. Okay, so it will go only that much distance. So under CM you have to check and this will stop here. Okay, this is just to perforate the outer cortex. After that, if it is a osteoporotic bone, you don't need anything. You take the measuring device before drilling this. You have to take this measuring device before perforating. You take the reading from here. You can take the lowermost. If it is 77, you can take a 75 helical blade. If your guide pin is 10 mm or 5 mm away from the joint line, don't take longer screw. Okay. So after that, if it is a hard bone, you have to take this rimmer and rim throughout. You, according to the measurement of this guide pin, you set it here 85 or 90 whatever, and then you drill. This is diameter 10 mm, 10.3.
This one is 6.5.
The product manual देखिए
More than 6.5.
And here also there is stopper. You have to fix it according to the blade length and सेटा केते लंबा अछि देखे पड़ बाहर चैनल कितनी बाहर जाउछि. So while drilling this, most of the times the guide pin sometimes get out. ताकर device अच्छे तो guide pin ये करिया पे या perforator जो जोड़ा लगे आगे तो बहुत छोटे. सेटा नहीं तो रोड अच्छी device.
Solid.
So a handle type of thing, push that and then withdraw it so that the guide pin will not come out. Okay.
Solid.
So if the guide pin inadvertently comes out, it is always better to put this sleeve. See that you got this knot sleeve there, inner sleeve. You put all these inner sleeves and then put the inner sleeve and then put the guide pin. Okay, so that it will be in perfect position. Or else if you put it like this, it may fall anteriorly, posteriorly. Most of the time posteriorly and anteriorly. Then you take the helical blade and how it is inserted. Actually, you always try to do this yourself with the help of company people, because most of the time they will give you like this. So if someday they will not come, you will have very difficulty in putting this attachment there. It will fit like this, and there is inner locking mechanism. Okay, so here these are slotted design and this red mark, yellow mark. So when you will hammer this nail, it will rotate like this, and you see this profile. This profile helical blade is different from screws. PFNA2 has different profile, PFNA has also different profile. So while inserting, it will compact the bone, the cancellous bone around, it will compact so that it will give a better rotational stability. Okay, and there is less pullouts.
Match this red to red, then only it will go.
So
it will go automatically.
Now
anti-clockwise.
It will go like this. Okay. So you try to push it with hand as much as possible. Then you take the hammer and hammer it. Then you gently tap it. Okay. Under CM control. And here there is a stopper. It will go up to that distance only. It will go rotating like this. Okay. And compact the bone. and at the end
This is rotating. This thing is rotating.
this mark will align
While he
at
is
the end.
hitting, it is rotating anti-clockwise.
Red
See
mark
that?
will align with red.
That means
yellow.
it's going in some pattern.
So after this, you have to tighten the set screw. The flexible remote. From here there is a set screw. Okay. You have to tighten it fully so that the set screw will migrate and sit over the helical blade top. After tightening fully, then you have to make half a turn anti-clockwise so that there is some. After that you can give compression by releasing the traction and rotating the it a one turn hoga. So you have to rotate it one turn, complete turn, so that the screw will remove get backwards after. After that you release traction and then you can give compression, intraoperative compression. Kitte compression maximum है 13 mm.
8 mm.
8 mm. So we have to check it. We have to give clockwise rotation. So this nail area will get compressed. The fracture will compress. Okay.
What will happen if you over compress?
If it is a very osteoporotic bone and if you are over compressing, there is high chance that the nail will get helical blade will loosen up. The cut out will say helical blade will loosen.
It will back up.
Back out.
Okay. So beyond one level, you can, if you tighten it too much,
Don't
blade
need
will
too
back
much
up.
compression.
So
If
it
you-
is a very judgment. You will have that subjective feeling of how much compression. Actually, check with CM all the time how much you are compressing. Beyond one step, you will get that giveaway sign, and you know at that point of time the nail is backing out. So that is that when you come to, by chance you come to that position, it's okay. Just lock the top knot so that it becomes a static device. So even if it back out, it's now still a fixed angle device.
Can you do this step after this one?
Which step?
This one.
Set screw? No. You have to, because the set screw in the this is the nail, the set screw and helical blade. It is away. So you have to go. You have to rotate it to that level, then slightly rotate it backward so that there will be compression effect. And after compressing, you can either leave it like that in a dynamic mode, or you can again tighten it to a static mode. So for final tightening, you have to take the solid screwdriver.
Torque
It is
limiting.
torque limiting solid screwdriver. You can unstable
Depends, and
fractures.
if it's a very stable fracture, then better to put it in a. Now, if I get a very good compression, then I put it in a static. Osteoporotic in a stable fracture, compression static. If you have a 0-0 anatomical reduction, if I am expecting collapse to happen, then I should put it in a dynamic.
The osteoporotic one, we may have a after the local surgery, we may have osteoporotic collapse. In that case, we should
Not necessarily. If you are getting a very good anatomical stable fracture compression, it will act as a it will act by directly. Bone to bone, primary union is expected. So in that I am just putting a static lock, static locking of the proximal blade, and I will not put any distal lock.
they will be dynamic on the
Distal. So that is the way.
For the
If it is
distal,
a-
only dynamic screw will be.
No. Mane, suppose it is a osteoporotic fracture, it's a very stable fracture. I will lock the blade to the nail, and it's a static device now. I will not put a dynamic interlocking screw to this time.
It's a single unit.
So it's a single unit. So whatever dynamism I expect it from the distal.
The way the first generation came. এটা হেলিকল প্লেটটা হঠাতে কম্প্রেশন ইফেক্ট কেমতি আসুଛି সেটা
Provisionally reduce, then then put the helical blade, then put the plate. So, but if it is a very comminuted fracture, can we use this system there?
Yes, you can. Even if it's very comminuted, you still can reduce the posteromedial fragments, lateral fragments, put it back. You can provisionally have smaller KOS bones, and then you can put encircles where also to keep it together. So that you are very assured of your next set angle. So that is the key to success. After that, the nail is just a device to hold it. And additional stability is given by all these encircles wires or plates. So these are just implants to give more stability, buy you more time till the bone unites.
So if there is bone loss, a very osteoporotic bone,
bone will be lost. Bone will be there only. It's not a compound fracture.
Completely shattered bone, like we are not able to.
Why are you going
These are few. There is a grey zone. So in an IT fracture.
Even if it is a IT fracture in 80 or 85-year-old elderly people, if you are suspecting that your osteosynthesis is going to fail and you want to mobilize the person from day one, you can go for a bipolar hemiarthroplasty with an mechanism repair. The bipolar and reconstruct.
So that is a big debate.
Try osteosynthesis first. If it fails, then you can go to.
No. There are certain scenarios where very medically morbid, comorbid patient, you have got only one chance. You don't want to see the patient and next time in the OT. You don't want to see the patient. I want to do one stem. Long stem repair the GT.
No short stem.
Long stem. Yeah. Put a Wagner stem and repair the GT. Similar whatever you can cemented long stem.
तो ये जो ये टा तार स्लाइड करूची नेल रे ग्रुप এটা जो जाउची ना तार slotted design टा अछि when you will compact the bone it will give some rotational stability and here top screw there will be sliding movements इदिटारा movement हो गोटे rotational और sliding इदिटा हो cement augmentation करले सेटा additional purchase तो usually reduce the lesser trochanter. But is there any scenario where you want to reduce it? People put screws there or put a encircles where SS where and try to reduce that.
Lateral both compression
large posteromedial fragment in the head.
Yes. So sometimes the lesser trochanter is like a big chunk. It is also extending
to the
subtrochanter. Subtrochanter is posteriorly. So that's a very big chunk to lose. So in that cases, you have to reduce it and fix it. Otherwise, it will going to fail because that is the weight bearing area, the posteromedial aspect of the calcar. And if you don't reduce that has, in those scenarios.
स्पॉटलाइट जैसे है एड्रेस थैंक यू फॉर बीइंग
Dr. Krishna Shah, please come.
थैंक यू फॉर बीइंग ए फैकल्टी
Now,
ready.
स्पॉटलाइट
हाँ अच्छा
नाले ऊपर चेयर पर
ready first class. Now lunch is ready, sir.
Last but not least, thank you guys, Mr. Gaurav, Shantanu and his whole team. Fantastic work, great job.
Actually, it's a new experience for doing a hybrid course. This is the first time we are doing.
It's a learning
experience. Definitely, we will do better next time.
Should we outreach and PG students?
Yeah, you should call the PG students, at least final year PG students.
Try to be more enthusiastic. More.
Last year, actually, I have practice.